Hi, I want to talk to everybody today about all of a homesteader's biggest nemesis, and that is weeds. What we are looking at right now is a beautiful planter box full of bulbs and a ground cover, and the bulbs all bloom at a different time of the year. It reminds me of fireworks, but I have not seen that in 2 years. Because no matter how many times I weed this bed, the weeds just grow right back within, maybe a week. It's an exhausting process. And that is just one of the weeds that I deal with on our 40-acre property. So what we're dealing with here is that we live in a very fertile place with lots of rain. Even the farmers around us don't have to irrigate. And the property that we bought hadn't been farmed in about 5 years. No one was even living here. So everything just kind of got overgrown. Now, this property is probably one of the best foraging properties we could ask for. I can forage almost everything that North Idaho has to offer on our property when it comes to herbs, a lot of the berries. We don't have huckleberries. We're too low for that. But pretty much everything else. But I'm still learning how to forage. Some of it I'm really good at, some of it I'm not. But most of this is just wild grasses, and it's not going to do me any good. I don't have any need for it, and I don't eat out of this bed. So we've tried to let these weeds coexist with our gardens because we were really just tired of fighting it. And that didn't work. We tried that last year and a little bit the year before, and it just completely overran everything. It completely choked out our gardens. We even had a local suggest to us, oh, just let them grow because it keeps the soil damp. And she was an old timer, been doing this for years. And we still just spent, we had no garden because it was completely overran by weeds, mainly purslane, which a lot of people are really excited to find out we have purslane because they eat it. And I don't mind that, except for when I spend the time to put in a garden and the money and expect the vegetables that I choose, and the purslane can overgrow it and choke it out in just days. It happens faster than I've ever seen before. It's a problem. It doesn't work. Plus, turns out I'm allergic to one of the plants on our property, and I've talked about that a little bit on my podcast before. We don't know which one. I've had some allergy testing done, and they can't really lock in which one it is. So we have done a few different things in our garden or on our property to try to combat the weeds and to make it where I can work our homestead and not having to be dealing with breaking out in hives and even anaphylaxis. So today I invite you to go on a walk with me around my homestead when I cover all the different ways that we have tried to combat weeds and which ones have worked, which ones haven't, and what we want to continue doing. So, seems how I'm sitting here, I'm going to go ahead and go over this garden bed with you. This bed, like I said, is we don't eat out of it, and it's nowhere near anything we do eat. So, we have tried literally everything, except for we tried pre-emergent this year, which is something you put on the soil and it kills the seeds before it emerges. We do believe that we got that on a little too late. So we're going to try that again next year. I plan on weeding this bed out in the fall, which I've never weeded in the fall because I just haven't had time. And I'm actually going to try to weed it before anything goes to seed, like maybe August time. But I just know there's no point in this early spring when it just rains all the time. Hopefully catch these things before they go to seed. And then in the spring, I am going to put me hi, buddy. I have a friend out here today. I'm going to put the pre-emergent on before anything has a chance to come up, and we will see how that goes next year. But for this year, I have a beautiful bed of weeds. All right, this bed behind me, I have some beautiful bulbs here that they've already grown and died for the year. Those are actually my favorite. They come out this beautiful gold color that I've never seen. They're irises. And this is right outside my bedroom window, so I get to enjoy the irises every year. Now, I promise not all my talks are going to be about flower beds. A lot of the other stuff I'm going to show you is specifically to gardens and other areas on the homestead. But seems how I was in my front yard, I figured I would show you this one. This bed was really, really overgrown with grasses. There are still some grasses over here that grew back this year. We haven't had a chance to work on these beds too much. But there's a beautiful variegated ground cover growing behind me. There's also some shrubbery behind me that flowers, and there's mint in this bed, both regular mint and chocolate mint. What we did here a couple years ago actually is we just burned this whole bed. Now, I will talk about burning a little bit later on. My husband burned this bed. It actually destroyed all of our irrigation and we had to put in new irrigation. So make sure if you are going to burn a space that you have cleared it thoroughly first. But it's been 2 years. We're just now starting to get some grasses back. It is something I can handle by hand. And so that is an option when you're dealing with your flower beds. The flower bed I showed you previously, we didn't want to burn because there was so many bulbs. We didn't want to damage those bulbs. But in this case here, it was a ground cover that we weren't in love with, and it was meant that it grows all over our property. We knew that we could repropagate it. So that is what we did here in this bed. I'm going to go ahead and point you down the rest of our beds here. As you can see, most of these are clear. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know why they are. I've actually tried to plant things down here with irrigation and nothing grows. So I'm just going to roll with, I have a place with no weeds, and actually at the end of it is our fire pit that overlooks this beautiful valley behind me. And so we're kind of good with no weeds down there. So I probably should have apologized in advance for the wind today, but our beautiful June weather here in North Idaho has not allowed me to come out and video this in the week that I've been trying to do it. So today is the day because I had a break between podcasts. So what we did in this garden is we actually stripped it and put in raised beds last year. Grabbing my next item from my child. So we put these raised beds in so that we could have better control of the weeds growing in this area, and that I could spend more time out here weeding and just spending time in my garden without having to worry about having some sort of anaphylaxis, and to really be able to focus on having the highest yielding garden we could possibly have. Because as you can see, putting in garden beds, it actually takes up a lot of our space that we would use for planting before. So if I can have higher yields within my beds, then it makes it worth it to give up some of that space. And I mean, you can see behind me, you're seeing the carrots here. I have my tomatoes. In North Idaho, we've only been able to have our gardens in for a few weeks, so it's actually looking really good. Now, I still, when I'm out here gardening, or weeding or doing anything like that, I always have my Farmer's Defense sleeves. And what these do, especially if I'm working with tall weeds, sometimes if I'm just working with the short ones, I get a little claustrophobic in anything long sleeve. These are actually probably the best thing I've ever worked with when it comes to that, because they're really thin. They have a thumb hole, super fun. When I reach into the tall weeds, I'm not getting whatever it is on me that causes me to have that reaction. And then it leaves my fingers free, which is nice. And I don't really get the reaction as bad with my hands, probably because of the thicker skin, but I can also get in and wash my hands a little easier than I can, all the way up my arm. So yes, if I am working in my garden, especially doing any type of weed pulling, I'm going to be wearing my Farmer's Defense sleeves. So that's actually where my child had to go find them. I was using them somewhere else. They are filthy. I use them all the time. So, but I had to get the white ones because they had sunflowers, and sunflowers are life. So anyways, what I do out here in this garden is we do have some sand that we're getting ready to put down in between beds to definitely keep down any of the weeds that are coming up in this area, like in between the beds. My husband will come out and weed eat. You know, we stomp around on it a lot. That just kind of keeps the weeds down in general. Now, in our actual beds, I do rotational weeding. Now, I tried to use the zone system that Joe Winger from the Prairie Homestead or Old Fashioned on Purpose brought up, which is where, you know, you divide your garden into zones. Now, with our garden, we have our beds, and then we have a whole nother garden that I'm going to take you down to here in a minute. That you can like divide it into zones, and then, you know, every Monday you do the tomatoes, every Tuesday you do the, you know, the root crops. I mean, however you want to do that. For me, I am just not that organized, nor am I able to allot that amount of time into, or you know, I'm not allowed, my life does not allow for me to allot a certain amount of time every single day for something like this. Or if I do have time every day, it's maybe I catch that half hour before the sun's going down, or the 20 minutes that the dinner's in the oven, and that's the only time I can get out here and weed. And I'll actually just sit out here. That's my chance to listen to a podcast or whatever book I'm listening to. And I'll just sit out here. I have, you can see my 2 stools and a folding chair out there. I also have a rolling seat. I'll clip in a little picture of that. It looks like a little old John Deere tractor, and it's got a place for my tools underneath and a comfy seat, and I can just roll down in between the beds, and it makes it where I can just really quickly weed in between my rows of crops, or my rows of vegetables. I guess it's not really a crop if it's just my little garden. I don't know. And that makes it really easy for me. Most of the time when I say I'm gonna go out and weed, my family scatters, and so that buys me some time to just have quiet time to listen to, you know, whatever it is I'm listening to, regain my thoughts, get some fresh air. And when I get done weeding a spot and it's really clean and beautiful, I really feel like I've accomplished something. Where when I'm working on some of the stuff with my business, it can take me several days to accomplish one task, especially if I'm writing. And being able to come out and spend 20 minutes and accomplish a task really helps clear my brain while I'm trying to accomplish larger tasks. So I really love my time out here weeding. Now, when I'm weeding, a lot of times I just do it by hand, and I talked about that. I also have a couple of different tools that I use. I have a willow that I just realized is not here. I have that down in my larger garden, and I'll show you how that works when we get down there. I'll also use some small hand tools, and I have some clippers that are also in my larger garden. Because we've been working on there primarily because this garden's pretty much in, and the other one we're doing some more work on. So let's go ahead and head to our next place. So to give you guys a quick tour of this garden, just to see what I've been talking about, this is where I have been weeding this last week. So these are my onions, celery, and peas. It is not a perfect weed job, but it keeps me happy. As you can see, there's already weeds starting to grow up in between. This is the roller chair I was telling you about. Very comfy seat, place for my tools, big tires, rolls great. I have that and a bucket, and I just scoot all over this place and weed. It's facing this way because this is my pepper plot, and as you can see, it is full of weeds. You cannot tell the difference between the peppers and the weeds. So don't think just because I'm sitting here telling you all the ways to deal with weeds that means I have it perfect. I'm showing you how I keep it under control and still can have a beautiful garden. So I said I would cover burning a little bit more. If you caught my last more educational YouTube video, I post a lot with my podcast. So if you caught my last educational one, it was called Burning My Homestead. And this area behind me was horrible dried weeds that, I mean, we couldn't even graze it, which, I mean, in the case of these weeds, I mean, these are nice grasses that my animals love to graze on. But when it's just all dried out, they're not even gonna touch it. So we burned this whole area. This whole hillside was black. And that was less than a month or so ago. And as you can see, it is completely grown back with waist high, good forages for my cows that are coming home from the neighbors today. They've been over there getting bred for a couple months, and they're coming back today, and I'm really excited to get them out on grass. All right, we are officially in what we call our big garden now. You can see boys in the back. Over on this side, I have raspberries. In front of me, I have grapevines. Behind me here, there are pear and apple trees. And then on the ground is where a lot of our plants are growing. We have squash started, cucumbers, melons, potatoes, and corn, and green beans. They're all just coming up. They're pretty small. So I do have a lot of weeds growing in this area out here. We tried to keep this as fallow as possible for the last couple years to try to like not be watering it, not plowing it, to try to help deal with the weed situation. Now I am having to just kind of let it sit because I don't have every single seed hole marked. And so if I'm walking out there, I might be stepping on my seeds. So I'm waiting for everything to pop up, and then I'll come out here and start regularly weeding. When I do that, there's two different ways. We have our hula hoe, which you see me kind of, hey, no, buddy. We'll show them that in a minute, okay? Do you know what a hula hoe is, lady? The hoe that we break the weeds with? Okay, so I thought I had my hula hoe down here in the garden. I don't. But what it is it is not a straight hoe. It looks like a stirrup of on a saddle. And when you hit the weeds, it breaks right at the ground level, and then you can just run that right under the ground, and it's knocking everything down. Now, I don't love that because a lot of times they'll just grow right back. But if you're trying to do a large area, sometimes that's just your best bet. Please stop. Something else I've been doing out here, which I will show you some before and after shots. This is my homemade organic weed spray. What this is a gallon of 45% vinegar, a half a cup of salt, and a third a cup of Castile soap. And this stuff is amazing. I can spray it right in my garden and not kill my plants and not contaminate my plants as long as I can keep it off of my garden. Because this isn't actually killing the roots or anything, it's burning the leaves. Now, it's the 45% vinegar, it's called an agricultural or food grade vinegar. I have to order mine online. I can't get it anywhere nearby it. So when it comes in, I mix up a little bit. And because it is hard to get, I don't want to have to be spraying my whole garden area, you know, the perimeter of my garden and everything to keep weeds out of it. I would go through this stuff so fast. So actually what we do, I'm gonna set this down and turn the camera. My son comes out here, or came out here, and he weed-eated everything. And after he weed-eats, I come behind and I spray it all with my weed killer, and that just kills what's left. And I'm not having to spray, like, you know, waist-high plants all the way top to bottom, all the way through. And I mean, I came out here and sprayed just a couple of days ago, and I mean, you can see the dead on the leaves there. Which, now, like I said, I was just practicing with it to make sure I had the right mixture, and with that, I was just spraying whatever was out here. Now, like I said, my son's come out and done all the weed eating. I'm waiting for a sunny, non-windy day to come out and spray everything that he's weed eated. So then that'll just break down, and as we walk over it, it'll keep the weeds down out of our fence line near the garden and out of the raspberries that are all growing right here. And my raspberries go the whole length of the garden, and that's, if I don't keep up with, wipe his hand off. That'll burn. Stop. No.
What should I do?
Wipe your hands off in the grass, buddy. No, in the grass. No fire. Use the grass to wipe your hands. Okay, I decided to leave that in because my 3-year-old just sprayed his hand with a 45% vinegar spray. It shouldn't hurt him. I'm gonna get him in to wash his hands because I can imagine that it is an acid. So we're gonna get his hands in to get that washed, and then I will come back to go over the rest of my week protocol with you. So here I'm going to talk about weeds and livestock. I hope you can hear me well enough. I don't have a podcast tall enough for my 6-foot self. So here there are no weeds where I'm standing. That is because we just had our chicken tractor here. Well, I say chicken tractor lightly. We don't actually have a chicken tractor. I use, I don't know if you can see it behind me, but I use electric fence netting. We don't even have it hot. We just use that, and we move our meat chickens around our yard, and they totally take out all of the weeds. They eat all of it. We butchered around, and then I moved the chicken tractor to the next spot behind me and put new about month-old birds in it. And then that area will be free of weeds next. The next thing about livestock and weeds, you can use rotational grazing on your farm with any of your livestock, whether that is because you have additional pastures or because you're using temporary hot wire fence. Another option is if you are cutting down weeds with a weed eater, even your mower, you can feed those to some livestock. You cannot feed them to horses, rabbits, or guinea pigs, but you can feed them to cows, sheep, goats, pigs, and chickens. With the chickens, they suggest to have it chopped a little smaller, so that might be something you use with your mower. If you bag it, you can just dump it right into your chicken coop. With my pigs, I like to spread it out a little bit, gives them something to do, because you can have pigs out on forage, and depending on the breed of pig, some of them are completely on forage. Cows, goats, and sheep, they all love it. Their systems can handle it. You don't want to do that with horses. You will end up having them colic, and that can kill them. Now, you either want to feed them to your livestock fresh, or you want to go ahead and bag them up in a place that has, it's called aerobic fermentation, which means there's no oxygen in it. You're going to put that into some form of like unscented bag, but they have silage bags like at feed stores and stuff. And you can actually let that ferment, and it turns into like more of a sugar as a feed source. Now, that time in between though, between fresh and fully silage or fully fermented, they're not going to want to eat that because that's just like soured grass. I don't think anybody would want to eat that. So that is a great option when it comes to livestock and your weeds. All right, so the last piece I want to cover really quick, one I forgot to mention is you can compost any of your weeds. So you can, if you put them in your compost before they go to seed, or if you hot compost them, it'll kill all the seeds and you can use it as compost in your garden. Also, if you're going to compost any of your livestock manure, that needs to be hot composted as well to kill the seeds, and that's because it gets to a high enough temperature that it will kill those weed seeds. Now, the next thing I love about, well, not love about weeding, but is a really great opportunity on the farm, is that you can use it for an educational opportunity for yourself and for your kids. So what I do is I have an app on my phone. I think I use Nature ID. There's a few different ones, and a lot of them are free. When you're working in your garden or walking on your farm or anywhere that you might be, you can snap pictures and it'll tell you what that plant is. I always like to double check it to a book that was written by like, a professional or something, but it gives you a really good idea. It also, if you don't have service, you can take the picture when you get back to the house, you can check it. So that's another fun option. And it helps the kids learn plant identification and botany. And so I use that a lot because I'm still learning to forage, and I know that there's so many great things on my property. Even when I'm weeding in my garden, I'll check each thing before I pull it up just to see if it is something that I might want to consider keeping. And I'll have another container out there and fill that other container with anything that should be kept. And then I'll come in and either, use it or put it in alcohol for a tincture extract, or go ahead and dry it and save it for something that I'm going to be doing later. If you guys have any questions about dealing with weeds, please feel free and reach out to me. I would be happy to help you research your problem or point you in the right direction for your climate. You can also check out my other podcast or my other YouTube video on burning. I also have a podcast on noxious weeds, which that's a really important one to check out because there are some weeds on people's property that you're legally required to take care of from your state because they're considered invasive. Thanks for joining me today on the Homestead Education.